Hi, welcome to the XY Chromies, Confidently Uncertain, a show where two Army vets turned renewable energy engineers talk science, veteran issues, geopolitics, and engineering, and everything in between. I'm your host, Pearson Guest, and I'm joined by, as always, by my co-host, Richard Ellis. How's it going today, Richard?
It's good to talk to you, Pierce. I'm broadcasting live from Seed Central. Here at Seed Central, we sell only heirloom varieties, not F1s, mind you. I want to warn you away from F1 varieties. You can't replant the seeds from F1 varieties of plants. You can only replant the seeds that you capture from your heirloom varieties.
That must include weed then, because I don't think you can plant weed with seeds. That's awesome. Well, we're back at episode 40 today. We just filmed 39. We got off the horn about 5 minutes ago. We took some utility break real quick to rehydrate and evacuate any bodily fluids we needed to. And I left you with a question last time. We were talking about how the U.S.'s liberal value of democracy is crumbling before our eyes. And, you know, it's been a slow crumble, but now it's really accelerated in the last 6 weeks, to the point where we posed or asked the question and proposed a couple speakers like Senator Merkley and Peter Zeihan, a geopolitical analyst, had said that the actions of this White House, this administration, are indistinguishable from a Russian Manchurian candidate, like a plant, and Putin himself, essentially, for how much Russia has benefited from these decisions and how much the U.S.'s liberal values have just eroded and collapsed, seemingly over the last 6 weeks. I brought up the point that it reminded me specifically of the Ottoman Empire at the turning point when things started to unravel. And that was because of the bureaucratic inefficiencies facing large problems that were being stopped by the political elite of the time from anything effectually happening. And this happened for hundreds of years. Basically, the political elite stopped any progress. There might be 20 years of progress, and then they would just pull it back. And so there was this ineffectual governance of an empire, followed by insane greed. The Ottomans raised tariffs, essentially, or transport prices to go through their country, which they were the doorway to Europe and to the East. They were that bridge. They were the land bridge. So they decided to raise the taxes on people traveling there by like 400%. And their thought was, we're greedy, one, like more, and two, what are people going to do? They have to pay. What are they going to do? Sail around Africa. And they thought this. They asked these questions like, what is somebody going to do? Sail around Africa. And lo and behold, Portugal does. And soon after, Spain follows suit, the French and the British. And before you know it, we have the modern colonial era coming out of those major countries. They become major countries, actually, because of this. Over the next 400 years, these countries became major countries due to the Ottoman turning off that route. That's what happened. And so what I propose to you is, if we carry this analogy forward now, that the U.S. is very similar to the Ottoman Empire. And I will say, you brought up a really fun point, which is like, oh, it's fun to compare them to a different empire other than the Roman Empire. And I yes-anded you and just said it could be both, because the Ottomans had conquered Rome by then. They owned Constantinople, so which was the head of the Roman Empire when Rome fell. The Romans didn't own Rome when Rome fell, unironically. The Germans owned it. They were a small fiefdom within Rome, under the umbrella of the Roman Empire, but it wasn't occupied by the Roman Empire, which is a funny little aside. So both, first off, we can do both the comparisons at the same time. So what is the go around? What is the Portuguese solution? What are the Portuguese solutions that will appear? And I'm not saying Portugal is going to, do something due to the U.S. actions. I mean, they could. Who knows? I'm just saying, what is the equivalent, or your predictions as far as that goes, or what do you think could happen? And yeah.
So one of the services that the United States um, extended as part of the bribe, as part of the coalition bribe,
Mm-hmm.
right? The the Bretton Woods agreement was mostly about economics following the war, but what ultimately came from it was that the United States had the last standing deep water navy after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So that deep water navy grew larger, and it essentially propped up the liberal global trade that we came to know as the reason why we just have so much stuff. Our consumer culture is just buried in wonderful things that we can buy from all around the world.
Yeah.
Over several decades, the United States has made choices about that Navy that have caused the Navy to shrink in number of ships, but grow in capability of the ships that are remaining or being manufactured. So we have this incredible Gerald Ford aircraft carrier class now.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, it's
It's like a
it's
floating country of
well, I
weaponry.
was going to say the air power that the Gerald Ford has is larger than other some nations' entire military enterprise. Right?
Yeah.
It's such an incredibly impressive and imposing ship.
Oh, it
And
can carry
so,
what, like 32 F-35s or something, like a 70 or 30 something, some
yeah,
Astra. I mean, most countries don't have that many F-35s, right? Maybe the Dutch have, like, they've bought quite a few, and the British have some. But like 35 F-35s, yeah, most countries don't have one F-16. Like,
yeah.
uh, so
So where I'm going, I'm setting up the answer to your
sure,
question, which
sorry,
is, so we were doing this deep water navy enterprise, sailing around to all these different ports that we had set up in different places, and this was a lot of fun for sailors because it meant they got to have biblical congress with women all over the world. It was a lot of fun for them,
yes,
and um, there's this whole uh, heraldry that goes along with having a large navy. So we essentially became a naval empire. Became a what's the word?
a maritime
Um,
empire, or yeah.
there we go. Maritime empire is what I was looking for. It meant that
Kudos, shout out to Sarah
ships.
MC Payne, so, for all
Thank you,
of that.
Professor Payne, for that. The maritime empire versus a continental empire.
That's right.
So ships from any port, anywhere, could safely sail to any other port anywhere. Trade,
Yeah, with a
the
low
containers would
chance
be
of
offloaded.
piracy. With a low chance of
Precis-
piracy. Yeah.
Precisely. So essentially, what can come from this is that our navy is now mighty but small, and it can't really patrol the oceans. So we bring them in closer to the hemisphere,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially, what you have is indistinguishable from. Okay, so you want to do these two countries want to trade with each other? There's an ocean between them. How are you going to do that in this new ocean environment, this new maritime environment where piracy is now rampant again? Because it will come back, and it will come back very much like the days of yore when empires were in constant competition for resources around the
We
globe.
could just say World War One. I mean, right
Precisely.
before World War One and during World War One, like the piracy
Yeah.
was happening. Like, it was easy. It was crazy.
It
Yeah.
was an important feature of empire maritime activity.
Mm-hmm.
It was an important feature of it.
You had, yeah.
You
It was accounted. It had to be accounted for.
you bought insurance basically because you were going to be pirated at some point.
Yeah.
It wasn't a matter of if; it was a matter of at what point during that voyage it was going to happen.
Sure.
So, what we're reverting to, or maybe evolving towards, is a maritime situation that is very hazardous on the open seas. And in order for this Dutch company to trade with this Taiwanese company, the only way they're going to be able to do it is with escorts, with literal, like,
Yeah.
we're going to get in a convoy and we're going to sail from point A to point B and all the
So
places
the
in
goods
between.
are going to be way more expensive. So that means that
Yes.
the amount of stuff that will be traded will just be less naturally because
Yeah.
it's going to have to be worth it to convoy that good. So we're
Right.
talking more specialized goods potentially, and only going to countries who can really afford those specialized goods potentially. So that's one
So
thing. From there,
yeah.
that
So
I'm
when
just
it
kind of adding to
totally
like what that'll do economically.
yeah.
Um, it'll really make countries to have to sit down and make hard decisions about what they're going to export and import and to whom and how much they're willing to pay for that protection, right? Because it sounds like the US is going to be a mercenary for hire. Yeah, you want to trade with us, we'll protect the route, but you need to pay us a lot more because we're the ones doing the protecting. And we want special deals and concessions anyways. So the countries that we have to trade with have to be in dire straits enough that that is still a better deal
Yeah.
than being robbed in the open seas trading with other people,
Yes.
or they're going to have to build up their navy to,
Yes.
or they're going to have to build the nuclear arsenal won't help with the navy part, but I'm already thinking the fact that there's like 10 to 20 countries that are talking about nuclearizing right now because what if the US isn't there? Because let me just yes and to this.
Yeah.
Not only did we provide soft power to the Navy from literal pirates, like
Yeah.
whoever, pirates, you want to say ARG, but I don't know what ARG is in Somali, you know, or Houthi. What's ARG for Houthi? Death to the infidel, I suppose, or death to the Jews, something like that, I'm guessing. Whatever death to the Jews is probably what they say when they, instead of ARG. But anyways, I'm serious. They have a flag that literally has a Jewish person spiked on it or some shit like that. Like literally, I'm not projecting anything onto these people. They think this. Based on what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians, maybe they're justified too because they're, fucking slaughtering a bunch of people in an open air prison because, yeah, there are no good guys in global conflicts that are starting to arise. Richard, are we learning there's no good guys? And we're included in that again. Like we could honestly be like, oh yeah, we're totally the bad guys. Like we had this like small little sliver where we were like helping Ukraine. It's like, oh, could we be the good guys? And they were like, fuck that. No, double down on us being the baddies.
For just a moment, we had hope.
So we project a lot of nuclear safety and deterrence
Mm-hmm.
around the
Mm-hmm.
world. That's what we do. Now you have not only Ukraine obviously looking like, fuck it, dude, we need to start illegally enriching this shit. And they might be smart enough to do it. I don't know if they'll be able to get the supply to the right type of uranium to do it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't count the Ukrainians out. They seem to be, I'm done underestimating these people.
I like the idea that our official stance is the Ukrainians are crafty and resourceful.
I mean, that's my assessment so far. They wouldn't be the first people that were not properly assessed as crafty and resourceful. Now
Yep.
they fall into that camp. Good for them. In a long line of crafty and resourceful people, from the Japanese to the Koreans to the Germans, like Ukrainians, welcome to the
Yeah.
crafty. That's good.
We stand by our assessment.
Yeah,
It's
crafty.
quite a compliment.
So, I wouldn't count out on them doing it. The Japanese are already saying, "Well, wait, do we have to nuclearize?" I mean, because we already make nuclear powered subs and ships and shit. We can fucking
Right.
we can make a nuke. The Japanese can make a nuke tomorrow. Like literally, this is not going to be hard for them. But we're looking at a world where the Japanese and the Germans are remilitarizing, and I'm adding the Japanese in here because they've only militarized for global conflict a couple times since they modernized their culture and country to the modern Western era, I'd say. They're very young in that modernization still. They're only 100, it was like, 90, They finished what would be considered their modernization by 95. I'm just saying when they started to exercise their global might. But both times, from then on through the 1940s, Japan was terrifying when they militarized, and I wouldn't count them out because they're pretty crafty and clever as well. So I got off the rails there. What I'm saying is like another result or sail around, for our analogy, is the rearmament of nuclear or just the straight up nuclearization of the world, the militarization of the world. These things are going to happen. I think we're going to see some really interesting liberal alliances possibly occur in Europe that we haven't seen before, potentially.
Right.
These might be some positives that we haven't seen before. A coalition of the Eastern European and Nordic countries might occur from Poland all the way to, the Netherlands, potentially. We could see the Poles and the Germans get along more than they ever have before right now.
Right. Yeah, there's a...
Yeah, go ahead.
What is at foot is that they're... Not that they're... Let's see, how do I put this? There's no grudge holding, like good old world grudge holding. Like I know some folks from Eastern Europe that really, if you get them going, they can really let you know that they have not forgotten about the trespasses of a long forgotten conflict or feud, right?
Sure.
So that still exists, and also there have been three basically generations of people since the last global conflagration.
Mm-hmm.
And so the things that they value and the relationships that they're interested in and the trespasses that they're still holding grudges about have probably changed a lot in 70 years. And
sure.
So now, whereas, in the 1940s, there was still a lot of sewage under the bridge that people wanted to re-adjudicate, which got re-adjudicated in the 40s. But now that's changed. So hopefully we can see, some of these new alliances that where Europe would have been very divided in the past for all of its balkanized reasons. Now it's probably going to be knit together and be a stronger monolith.
It could. That's a potential workaround. I'd say it's 50-50. It's just as likely the AfD party wins in Germany, the far-right party, Le Pen wins in France, and before you know it, you have a bunch of far-right coalitions.
Yeah.
And Germany's already remilitarizing, but you have the AfD party in charge. Here's some scary scenarios. I'm sorry. It's nice to think of the positivity, and I'm like, yeah, I could see that. But I have been I would say the term is black-pilled when it comes to a lot of this because of the evidence of the growing AfD party in Germany and the far-right movements all over the Europe that have been growing in mass in a lot of these places. When I see Germany has another coalition government, but it's being ran by their right party, their conservative right party, not the far right. But the fact that they are only operating as a coalition and that they need other people to get things done and to make votes happen. If Merz had announced all these spending to do what he needs to do, I would have been really terrified because it would have shown the German people that nothing was really happening in Germany. And that's basically what happened in the last 3 years under Scholz. Not that Scholz could do much because he was operating under a coalition government because they didn't want the AfD to win. This is what the situation has been, is like, holy shit, that party is rising. If we don't coalesce together, they're going to have tons of seats and they're going to have power. And we can't let the Nazis in our country have power because we're Germany. And that's been the goal. But in doing so, they've limited their ability to react to this extremely dynamic climate that they've now entered, where their economy, which is one of the most globally tied economies in the world, and their energy supply has been cut off, Russia, because they have to. and they need to remilitarize, and their demographics are collapsing. What an insane situation to be in when you have a coalition government that's going to take a bureaucracy to make decisions fast.
Yeah.
The You and I know enough of history to know that that could spell a disaster. If they're not active enough fast enough, the people will be like, God, I just want something to get done. And we saw the story in Poland, right?
Mm-hmm.
After their whole government gets wiped out, 4 or 5 years of just not being able to figure out how to build a government because the
Mm-hmm.
whole government got wiped out. They had to start from zero. Next thing you know, you get some far right Nazis in there and they're undoing democracy as fast as they can until 2022. And so I'm looking at Germany, I'm going, ooh, the next 4 years, this coalition government better get shit done. They better announce it to the people loudly. Hey guys, we are doing stuff for you. Please look at all the stuff we're doing, and they need to be effective like a coalition has never been effective in their country. They need to make tons of decisions, because if Germany plunges into an economic recession and a bad one, I wouldn't count out the AfD not winning. And
If your progressive and liberal-minded government doesn't deliver on the basic things that the population wants, a conservative right-wing government will definitely step in and accommodate. They will absolutely
they'll deliver something.
they will
they'll
deliver something. By the way, the um just I'm just stuttering a little bit because I have 9 things to say on this. We have
Of
a
course.
lot to talk about here. One of the things that I'd like to identify is that the United States is going through a paroxysm of political change, and we're moving the deck chairs around a little bit on our ocean liner. It's not
That's
sinking
a
yet, but we're rearranging the deck chairs. And one of the reasons that that's happened is because, to whatever extent, the last 4 administrations have been some variation on, um, upholding liberal democracy, uh, building out the bureaucracy of our administration, right? To the extent that these things have been going on, maybe even more administrations. I should probably go back to the Nixon administration. To the extent that this has been going on, there have been a couple of things that no American government has really done very well with regard to the American public feeling left behind in their ability to earn income, support a family, take a trip to Disneyland, right? Do these things, buy a house. The American public has felt left behind in this. And part of their part of the what is uh, the MAGA agenda is to point the finger at liberal politics. So um,
We can just say
uh,
DEI woke, and that
this
covers it,
is
I
this
guess.
is that's how it's being referred to
Yeah.
now. I can't tell you how much I hate that language.
Yeah,
I
because it
just don't like
doesn't
it at
mean
all.
anything. It doesn't
It
mean
doesn't mean
anything anymore. It just means whatever anger that they need it to mean. Oh,
right.
that's woke. There's a woman playing a role in a movie. Pff, woke. DEI. Black
Yeah, and
person in a game, a video game. How dare they put a person that's not white and male in there? Woke. DEI. Jesus. I need to see more white
so
guys kicking ass and taking names in my video games. What the hell?
what what you just described is this experience of the American population. I would say it's grounded in people who look complex, whose complexions look like yours and mine, who what they can put their finger on is that they have less access to a civilization that they know that they are entitled to, and they have been told it is at the expense that the less access they have to that civilization and economics is caused by, I'm going to point over there
Them.
by those
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Them.
And those people are easy to distinguish because they are complected differently. They speak a different language. They dye their hair some series of colors. Whatever it is about that group of people
For
over
a second, I was
there,
like, dye their hair. Oh, you're talking about the blue hairs. Yeah.
mm-hmm, we can
Yes.
say that they're other in some way. And if you feel like you've been passed over for jobs, promotions, that you're right,
Your
you can't afford to buy
your
right.
manufactured injustices against you that the universe has or these
Yes,
people have put upon you. Yes.
that's right. That they're the cause of this, and that is the role that um, uh, I want to say the constellation of things that we call right wing. That that constellation of
Beliefs, yeah.
traits that works really well to come in and fill in where it looks like those people are being left behind or being displaced or otherwise losing the franchise.
So, you
They
want to
hate
hear a
it.
crazy statistic, Richard,
Go
right
ahead.
now?
Go
Why
ahead.
I know that Americans are not grounded in fucking reality? Okay, wait, actually I'll give you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Here's a guess. Take a guess. Do you know what the average credit score in America is right now? I found this out today. My wife Sarah told me this, and it blew my fucking mind.
I I know what my credit score is, and I know that the average credit score is probably 150 to 200 points lower than mine. I'll bet you it's in the 500 range.
It's higher.
Is it really?
The average credit score now, as of like 2023 or whatever, but that's the last time I don't know up to date, is 650.
Huh. Well,
Huh? Indeed. Yeah. I mean,
that fits my calculation.
yeah.
I
I
thought it'd be
mean,
lower.
yeah. I did too. I have like a 820 or some shit, but I like 6 fucking 50 in America. The average credit score is 650 in America. Holy shit! Our country is doing so well. People are doing so fucking well. The employment has been so good. Do you know that real wages went up under Biden by 7% for the first time in 40 years, by the way? So what's crazy to me, and I'm going to just push back on like the last 4 administrations or whatever, just a little bit, because I don't want to include Biden into this, because when you think about Nixon to, or we'll say, yeah, no, Nixon doesn't count. He's establishment. When we think about Carter,
Yeah.
all the way till Biden, but basically till Trump, there's not a fucking single establishment president out of the last group of any of them. None of them were. And what I mean this, so now people are going to go, well, Bush Sr., he was in the CIA. That doesn't count. What I mean by establishment is a specific thing. It's taken me a long time to understand this because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and it always kind of feels a little conspiracy theory, and it's not. This is just the way things have worked in America. Our presidents have been picked for us by white Protestant men in rooms, cigar rooms, for most of our history, up
Yeah.
through Nixon until Carter.
Yeah.
And on both sides, they have. This is how it's happened. In fact, sometimes Republicans and Democrats have picked the same person before. They've been like, "Hey, do you want to run for us?" Famously, Eisenhower, when the Democrats and Republicans both asked him because he was just so fucking popular. Everyone loved Ike. I mean, it was his slogan. We love, something like "We love Ike" or something. Famously, Eisenhower had to go. He's like, I need to go to a cabin. He went to a cabin for like a month. And he's like, I'm going to go figure out if I'm a Republican or a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back and he's like, I'm definitely a fucking Republican, which is probably true. I mean, as a general, just probably, the vibe. He was, whatever. Anyways, but so this is how, so the presidents would be picked. Now, there were primaries before this, but primaries were ceremonial because a lot of times would win primaries in a couple states. Well, first off, so primaries weren't done at every state like they are done now. I mean, it's easy to think that all these things happen forever, and I thought primaries have been an artifact that had been around for a long time, but they haven't really been around. They'd been around for a long time, but symbolically, they'd been around for a long time. The power of the primary has only been around for like 40, 50 years of politics, basically. So, and we know this because people would win some primaries in a bunch of states, and the Democratic or Republican elite would be like, yeah, we don't want that one. They'd pick somebody else. They're like, that's great. He won primaries. This is going to be the person we're running. A lot of times when they do that, that person would lose, by the way, because it wasn't the people didn't like him. And so the other one, whatever. This happened until Carter. Carter was an outsider. He was just a Georgian GOP, and he won. And he won in large part because Nixon had eroded the public trust more than any president had in the modern day era. And it set us, and we're a distrustful people of government just naturally. It's built into the system. It set us on a pathway of distrusting the establishment such that we just couldn't vote for an establishment president anymore. And it turns out that establishment presidents know how to preside a lot better than non-establishment presidents a lot of times. This is the deal. This is just, if you understand the bureaucracy a little bit, sometimes you can be more effective or ineffective if that's your goal, right? I'm not saying that we haven't had tons of duds of presidents in our past, but there's been plenty of establishment duds, elected by both sides of the aisle. But Carter was especially ineffective as a president. Probably one of the nicest people ever, but notoriously ineffective. Next, we have Reagan, a Hollywood actor, not very good, a governor, but then a shitty Hollywood actor, not establishment. And then you have Bush from the CIA, so he's a Fed, not establishment. But kind of, I guess the most establishment that you could be, super effective. Bush Sr. won 3 wars, in 4 years, right? He was crushing it. But no, we didn't like that shit. That CIA Fed had to go. Who do we pick? Clinton. The Democrats picked Clinton because they thought they were going to lose. They're like, governor from Arkansas, no one's going to vote for his ass. And he won. He was an outsider. Then who wins after him? Bush Jr. Bush Jr. Mm-hmm. Who was the establishment pick? The vice president of Clinton. He lost. Who was the establishment pick? Bush Sr. loses against Clinton. Bob Dole runs against Clinton the second time. Establishment totally gets destroyed by Clinton anyways, even despite the impeachment scandal. You get Obama, not establishment. Didn't even finish his first fucking term as a senator. He was 4 years in when he was won the presidency. So he really was a senator for 2 years. You don't know anybody if you're a senator for 2 years. He was never a congressman too. You got to the Senate. He bypassed the Senate from a mayorship in Chicago or something. So
community organizer.
Yeah, he wasn't even the mayor of Chicago. That's right. Damn, what a charismatic guy Obama was. I'm sandwiching this insult in a compliment. Very charismatic, one of the most likable people I've ever seen publicly. Very ineffective. Shout-outs, he's an 8-year Carter as far as I'm concerned. Both international relations style, Crimea, that's Obama. And locally. Now, were these Obama's faults necessarily? Absolutely not necessarily all his fault at all. He didn't know anybody because he'd barely been in government. So how can you actually do anything? Right. He was black, so the entire Republican Party brought out its racist genes that it never lost and started wearing those. And they said, we're not going to pass anything. So he had the most hostile Congress that anybody had in the modern day era, honestly. Newt Gingrich would have been fucking proud. Holy shit. What they were doing that is what Newt Gingrich envisioned when he said there should be a war on the other party. That was it.
Yeah.
And then we get Trump, not establishment, obviously, another outsider, until we get Biden, the first establishment president in 30 fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
And he was highly effectual. Did he make mistakes? Fuck yeah. The last year of Biden's presidency it probably might undo all of the good shit he ever did, because now we have Trump. So my point is, what point was I making, Richard? I'm just rambling on about establishment, non-establishment.
Well,
Center me.
we were. So what you have described for the audience is a as succinct as you possibly can assessment of the political time. This is something that I'm. This is not my original idea. This actually comes from another author who you actually sent this author's name to me, so I've just discovered them.
Okay.
And I this idea is political time. So what you just described is very succinctly the political time of these administrations, and you were describing their efficacy kind of at the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah.
And it's in service. So you were describing that because part of our interpretation of our time right now, this current administration, what's happening vis-a-vis like authoritarian governments and all of these different things that are swirling around. And back to your original question is, okay, so the United States is this hemispheric hegemon.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably going to forcefully take possession of whatever canals or passages past our hemisphere.
Well, BlackRock bought it, last week, so we got that one. Kind of. I guess private industry got it, but yes. Yep. So Larry Fink owns the Panama Canal. Good for you, Larry. You did it.
Yeah. You know what? What are you going to do? I mean, that's a lot of people's a lot of blood and treasure went into digging that canal, and now this character has it. So what we're working up towards is this idea of once you have a hemisphere hegemon like us, and now we're hostile to everybody, including our allies.
Our closest allies. Literally our closest allies.
Yeah, literally. And what does it mean? What does the new global order look like? And my answer to your question is, well, the seas get hostile, so now private navies have to be hired to convoy ships for trade. You offered up the idea of how the United States had basically kept the world from not every country that could generate a nuclear warhead did it, right? So
yeah, we stopped a lot of countries from nuclearizing. Right? Saying so hey, we'll stop nuclear war.
Yeah, we suppressed a lot of nuclear enterprise. Well, that's probably going to be the first thing that every nation that now feels unprotected by our withdrawal is going to try to pursue.
Yeah.
And we're very likely going to see a shifting of alliances and friendships that will die and new ones will emerge, all because we're no longer patrolling the waters. We're no longer setting the stage for for liberal global trade, and the places where trade would be bottlenecked down for transit are going to make a brand new deadly scenario for the nations of the world. It's a greater fracturing, and
multipolar is a
great way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
We are. The world was considered almost unipolar up until 2010, 2012, when people start to notice China might be the other pole. Mm-hmm. But we are forcing many poles now, essentially. Yes. We're going to force even more.
when you mentioned Japan earlier, I was thinking about this incredible thing. So one of the consequences or outcomes of World War II was that the belligerent nations of Japan and Germany were literally given exactly what they had gone to war for,
Mm-hmm.
right? They had gone to war for all intents and purposes. The German dictator called it Lebensraum, living room, and the Japanese had um, a Greater Asian co prosperity sphere. Essentially, what they were going for was the ability to. They didn't have energy, and they didn't have some of the raw materials that industry is built upon. But if they went to their neighbors and collected those things through force, then they would have them.
Mm-hmm.
And so after the war, as a consequence of this new global order that the United States was in charge of, they got exactly that. They got unlimited access to resources that they could build industries on.
Yeah.
All they had to do was agree not to remilitarize.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they abided by this agreement. And for the most part, they had incredible economic advantages from that point forward. Japan, as a nation, and the corporations within Japan figured out at some point that their demographics were never going to be sufficient for a workforce to manufacture all the things that they could possibly make and trade globally. And they did this really brilliant thing. They located their manufacturing plants in the places where they would sell the finished goods.
Of course. Yeah. So they
There
could
are
utilize the
numerous.
local labor force
Absolutely.
to bridge the
Absolutely.
gap and then have their
Yeah.
employment be centered around the best white collar work that we've invented, services. I mean,
Yes.
hello. By the
Absolutely.
way, if you don't know the hierarchy of economies, when you go from industrial, the golden place to get to is technology and services. It's the next
Mm-hmm.
step. It's what we
Mm-hmm.
are. It's what
Mm-hmm.
Singapore is. It's
Mm-hmm.
what other countries are that I can't think of right now, but there's plenty of them.
Neither can
Australia,
I.
New Zealand. I'm having brain farts all suddenly, but services, a service economy. And so what that means is, ew, consultants. A
Yeah,
lot of
gross.
fucking consultants, a lot of engineers, a lot of designers, and
Mm-hmm.
shit like that. Um, that's what you want your economy to evolve to because those are the highest paying jobs. Those are the best distribution of wealth. Um, yeah, that's what we
So
turned into. But we were like, fuck that. Let's go back to manufacturing. Do you remember? You and I, we didn't live through the era where manufacturing jobs were at its pinnacle in America. We
right.
we just have that's not our time.
No. No.
But I know enough about history to know that factory jobs fucking suck.
They're awful.
And you think they're going to be fucking good now because we have modern technology? No, they're still going to fucking suck. The reason they don't want you college educated is so that you're too fucking dumb to know that they're fucking shitty jobs and you're breaking your fucking body for not that much money. But it's
Yeah.
more than what minimum wage looks like now. So yeah, $25 an hour, $45 an hour. That's a great pay range when you're starting right now. Sure, sure. Well, you're making
So
40. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
one of the interesting consequences of Japan's transition into a despairing demographic situation, but a high technology nation,
Yeah.
is that in order for them to maintain their uh, technological and quality of life,
Yeah.
they're going to have to enter the global the maritime defense model that I'm describing, and
Yeah.
they're going to have to do it in a way that would be appalling to my grandfather, who served in the Navy in the Pacific,
My
who
namesake
under
did too. Yeah.
who understood the existential threat that the Japanese Empire presented. So that's the answer to your question: is that we're going to see uh, multipolarism. We're going to see
Nuclear
naval power,
proliferation.
nuclear proliferation, naval powers are going to shift to defend whatever global trade remains, so that there'll be defended convoys of merchant ships that are moving around the globe, and the that raises the price of those merchant goods pretty stratospherically. Not least of which, let's say we keep all of these tariffs that have been put into place, but the cost of having convoys sail with merchant ships is non-trivial, and it will change the dynamic of who can afford these goods.
If you
So
if I have a question for you, if you're
yeah,
China, what are you what are you thinking right now? Do any of your plans change? Like if I'm Xi, I feel like there's a lot of real good opportunity right here. Like
man, never been a better time to take Taiwan and reintegrate Taiwan back into the People's
I mean,
Republic.
beyond that, I'm talking about relationships with European countries, Mexico, Canada, everybody, right? Like
Sure.
right now, if the US is redefining who it wants to be friends with, and it's saying all my friends that I have, I fucking hate you guys because
Yeah.
they're like my family's friends. But now that I'm in
Yeah.
charge, the Trump administration, I don't like any of those fuckers. I always liked all the dictators and stuff, and you guys are all weak assholes. So I
Yeah.
fucking hate you. But I also don't like China either. And when I don't like all of you, and I don't like our enemy, I feel like that just is like, hey, China, want to try something different?
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, great question about what it's trying to do, and let's also uh, acknowledge that anything I say from this point forward, boy, big grain of salt,
Oh,
big pinch of
nobody
salt.
knows what China's going to do
Yeah.
besides Xi, and I'm not even sure if he knows right now. He's got his head's got to be fucking spinning. But yeah, there's all conjecture. We're just playing hypothesis games right now.
Yeah, totally. So what if you if you subscribe to the Peter Zahan theory of China's future, then what you know about China is that its demographics are in precipitous decline.
Sure, the Han ethnicity will
One,
be gone at the end of this
yeah,
sentence or whatever. Yes,
right,
yes.
exactly. One, so China has a demographic challenge. Two, uh, China is leveraged in this really precarious way. So
It's global
the
economy. Yeah,
so China's internal economics um, defy our understanding of what would be a good idea, but essentially, what what is the it's the People's Republic, right?
yeah.
So
The People's
what am I
Republic of
thinking?
China.
So what the polity in China has come up with as a way to, basically keep the population from uprising is keep everybody working, put everybody into factories, keep them busy, and throw money at the situation.
Hmm.
It's worked really well. One of the things that, and also, uh, let's acknowledge that their consumerism in China is pretty curtailed just for any number of reasons. Like they don't have the mechanisms for either spending money or saving money that we do in this country. And so one of the ways that China is leveraged is that a lot of people bought real estate. In fact, there's so much housing in China that there's more housing than there are people living in China or ever will be again in the future.
Sure, there's like a
And
billion empty units of housing, of
yeah,
which we don't even know the percentage that are actually livable as well. We should mention they're like
yeah,
half of those might not even have electrical wiring in the buildings or
right, exactly.
transportation systems that even make it to them or water distribution. So yes,
Totally.
yeah. Anyways,
So we have this we have this country that has a um well
a boatload of
I'll just say
problems.
a pretty creative approach towards its finance system,
Sure,
towards how people save and where their money goes and so forth. And then there's the last issue, which is as we talk about China being the place where all these amazing things are coming from on the Silk Road of ancient times. They were silks, they were spices, there were all these really wonderful things. But what China doesn't have are some of the industrial commodities that a nation needs to
Yeah.
flourish,
That's why it's,
including
yeah.
energy
Mm-hmm.
and including food inputs.
Yeah.
So China is heavily leveraged for its food inputs. And what the polity, the one man polity of China might end up doing is realize these different ways that the nation is leveraged and then do something with the intent of counteracting those leverages, but will probably have the inverse effect, which will just create more future problems for the nation.
That's a
But
good prediction. That is, that's an amazing prediction. Because you've managed to explain it in a way where I am filling in the blanks of what could potentially
yeah,
happen while
right.
not spelling anything really out. But you've given us enough. The idea, and for the audience who might be like, what is Richard saying? What Richard is saying, no, because what Richard is implying is that because China is basically ran by
Right.
one person, Chairman
Yeah.
Xi, is really top. He is consolidated power. He's
Yeah.
the most powerful person in China's entire history
Really. It's true.
ever. The
Incredible.
4,000-year-old civilization. He's the the most powerful emperor that's ever existed in China. Ever. He controls the most powerful military China's ever had, and they
Mm-hmm.
are able to project more power than they've ever had before, which is, it's regional to Southeast Asia, to be frank, and a little bit now on Russia. He's able to do this.
Right.
So yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of opportunity that will most likely be bungled because when you're a one man show, just managing a country of 1.4 or 1.2, however many it really is, we'll say a billion. We'll say
Yeah.
if they've been lying for so long, let's say it's probably a billion people, which is why I laugh when Peter Zion says that we're looking at the erasure of the Han ethnicity as like they have 3 times the number of people of us Americans. Like, I know demographic math and collapse, but I don't think that means the people disappear forever. That's just weird. Like, societies collapse all the time. That doesn't mean like the people are gone. They might have moved to a different country. Their country might be named something different.
Yeah.
You know. So okay, this has been really fun, but I want to bring it back around to a
Yeah.
little bit of positivity because
Yeah.
the last 2 episodes have been fairly doom or gloom, and they should be. You should be afraid. It's okay to be afraid of what's happening around the world right now. I'd prefer you were. It means you're paying somewhat of attention and you're not just watching
Yeah.
football or TikTok or whatever other dumb shit you're doing to distract yourself. And I get it. I try to distract myself with dumb stuff too, right now. It's just really hard. Maybe I'll read some fiction. I can't read that type of fiction that you're giving me because that's depressing as well. But the point is
He's referring to the Margaret Atwood series
so yeah,
about this dystopian future that we're envisioning. Oryx and Crake is the book that we talked about
yeah.
last time.
So my thoughts about this are, when I read history, I have 2 things happening a lot of times now. I'll be kind of, oh wow, it's incredible this happened to this country at this time, or this leader did this thing, and or they did an atrocity, or they did something great. What I think some of the big takeaways through history are nothing lasts forever. I mean, it should be said, just nothing lasts forever, and more so, empires rise and fall on the leader all the fucking time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes an empire is just an empire within an empire. Right now, I would say the MAGA movement is an empire within our empire right now. They're coming in and they're creating a revolution in our country right now. And by a revolution, they're going in and they're undoing this country and they're putting a different country in place. A different world order, a different style of government is being created right now. I can't define what it is because it's not a monarchy necessarily. It's not but I guess kleptocracy might be the
Yeah,
most apt definition to it.
that would be the. I think that would be the most accurate way to put it.
So people die and regimes change due to those deaths. The smallest force, civil war force, can topple some of the biggest governments. In fact, it happens more often the other way around. Our Civil War was really rare. Small,
Yeah,
short, brief, very brief.
yeah,
Um, and it luckily turned out the way it did. It could have just been a split, and we'd probably be 5 to 10 countries by now. It would have kept splitting. It's not like it would have stopped at one.
right.
Oh, we're just done now. No, you start splitting, splits start to really happen. That didn't happen necessarily. Another thing is people in power can't help themselves. They cannot help themselves. Even when logic says, like, oh, I need to do this thing, I'm going to get more money and power necessarily by having a relationship with someone that's favorable, they still just can't help themselves. You know, Hitler should have stayed allied to Stalin. He should have fucking stayed allied to Stalin for a lot longer than he did. But he just couldn't help himself when he saw the
Right.
Russians fighting and getting fucked up by the Finns. He couldn't take
Yeah.
it. He was like, they suck. Fuck them up. You know, Elon Musk and Trump will not be able to help themselves. They can do an exorbitant amount of damage, probably the most damage ever if they stay together for the full 4 years.
Yeah.
But if history's taught me anything about people in power who want pure power and absolute power, they just don't last. Now, my money is on Trump will fuck over the technocrats.
Yes. I'm
Because,
if I may contribute
sorry, yeah, go
to
ahead.
what you're saying, because what you're saying is there's good news embedded in what you're saying, and that is that regimes like the one that we've seen come into power in our country as the executive administration, they can't help themselves. I like the way you're phrasing that. And one of the things that we've said in this forum is we've talked about these really interesting comparisons between the dictator of Nazi Germany
Mm-hmm.
and our present day administration.
Sure.
We see these really interesting alignments or similarities. Boy, they're just so suspicious and conspicuous.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I want to add to your thesis here
Yeah.
is that Adolf Hitler's negotiation strategy was this: start a negotiation with someone who might be an ally or close to you in some way, or that you have a shared vision with,
Mm-hmm.
and work the negotiation until at such point you back the other party into a corner so that what they do next is indistinguishable from a betrayal.
Yeah.
Engineer a betrayal into every negotiation,
If
right?
you've ever had a crazy ex, girl, or boyfriend, you might know this tactic has been used against you potentially in just a social relationship.
Yep.
Yeah.
It can be used as statecraft, and we've seen it.
Yep.
And that is what happened in the relationship between Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin.
Yeah.
They had a pact. They could have done some real damage to the world,
They could
and
have destroyed Britain.
they
I mean, yeah.
they
Like,
the world would look very different. The map would look very different if Hitler had not been this way.
yeah.
But he designed that pact with Stalin with the intent of Stalin betraying him in some way to necessitate the attack on USSR.
And we know this because Mein Kampf, he writes out how he feels about the Slavic people. I'm sorry. I don't even have to read Mein Kampf to tell you that he lays out what he thinks of the Russian people. Fucking
Yep.
Stalin's Georgian, so he's a Slav. Fuck that guy, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
totally.
telling you the way that. No offense to Georgians, I'm sorry. This is the way I'm projecting Hitler's thought process, which has made me
Exactly.
a little bit psychopathic to begin with. So
So
yeah,
the silver lining here is that at some point, one or more of these other dictators in the world that are strong men that are clearly the more interesting parties to have alignments with are going to enter into negotiations with our administration that that they will be positioned to betray our executive. And in those betrayals, the things that will come from them will not be pretty at first. The short term will be ugly, but the
Many of us will
outcome.
die from this betrayals. I mean, the sad part is, at the end of the day, us, the people, pay the brunt for all of
Yeah,
this statecraft that's going
yeah,
to happen one way or another.
that's right.
Um, so I would say silver lining is enjoy watching them fight and bicker above them because
Yes,
we'll be killing each other in their name for this. So
yes.
at least you'll get to see them eat each other. It's a very cynical way of looking at it, but you kind of have to look at it this way at this point because we've entered the dog eat dog stage of
Mm-hmm.
well, cycle. It's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
We've been here before. The 1920s in the U.S. and 1930s in the U.S. represented that. There were no labor protections. It was oligarchy versus labor. You think
Yeah,
the fight of America is a fight of labor versus
yeah.
oligarchy. That is the fight that has always existed. If you want more
It's a
silver,
class.
go ahead.
It's a
Yeah.
class war that has been presented to us as a race war.
Yes.
That's it.
It's a class war that's been presented as a race war and a gender war. And it's a gender
Mm-hmm.
war now and a race war again, by the way. Women are the enemy of the current administration, the women who don't go
Yes.
along. You should know. You might be our savior too, because it'll take you marching on the streets in force to make any change happen. I'm just laying out what the future's going to hold because it'll be
Yeah.
tougher for men to shoot you in mass than it will be to shoot us. So I'm just saying it's
Mm-hmm.
probably that'll be women that have to save us. And a lot of you will have to die to do it. Not that we won't be marching with you. I'm just saying this is going to be the deal. Another silver lining is they're going to crash the economy so that so many people aren't working in our country. When you make a lot of people not work, the lesson of China, the lessons of all places is if you have too many people who don't have anything to do, fuck, COVID
Yeah.
proved we'll have marches. The Me Too
Oh yeah.
movement, George Floyd, that's too
Yeah.
many. That's a bunch of people not working. That's what you get. You have a bunch of people who start looking around being like, things are fucked up. And what do I have to lose? I don't have to. I mean, right now, there's people marching. There's people that are protesting all over. They're burning Tesla, you know, or they're trying to vandalize Tesla. I mean, the French, they know how to revolt. I'll have to say, there's, God, we're past the hour, but I'd have 3 minutes of rant left. I would say we're pussies when it comes to the way we protest. We really are. And I mean the Americans. And I'm no different. I'm not out there marching right now. I've got two fucking kids. I can't. Uh, if I die, they'll just blame me for not being there when they grow up and have their fucked up
Right.
daddy issues. Like, okay, do I want to do that or do I raise them to what, to the best of my ability? However, and I have a job. I have to put food on the table and all those things. But if you take everybody's job and stuff and you just leave us around idle, things change. Um, if you take my sons away from me, things will change. If the
Mm-hmm.
government starts taking our children away because they've stopped vaccinating us and they start causing pandemics and sicknesses and we don't have a CDC anymore, which they're doing this. They're getting rid of all this shit. And our birth rates go down, our demography collapses. I mean, the really dark shit that Peter was saying, Zihan, at the
Mm-hmm.
end was like, Russia's like, how great would it be if we could collapse their demography so that we're on a level playing field? What a
Exactly.
fucking crazy thought that is. So, anyways, the silver lining is, um, it's gonna get bad, which will facilitate our need to fight. We're all gonna have to fight. Women are that have to continue to step up more than us. Sorry, we are the lesser of the two sexes when it comes to this shit. We've proven until otherwise, we can figure out a way to evolve to catch up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that doesn't involve us suppressing you. Um, and I say us as like I shouldn't even group us men into this. I'm just laying out the general vibe of what's going to happen. So, um, Yeah, we're in historical times.
Mm-hmm.
Silver linings are get ready to fight, get ready to learn. You need to grow as a human. You need to
Mm-hmm.
stop distracting yourself so much. I'm going to tell you what you have to do.
When I when we opened the conversation today, I'm serious. If you have access to a pot and can put dirt in it, one of the ways that you and your family will make it through this is because you learned how to collect seeds and you learned how to engage in a very old human enterprise of subsistence farming.
And
And
thievery, which has been
and the
around from
invest
longer than farming.
and the industrial system that provides seeds for hobbyists now does so that you cannot regenerate those seeds from the plants that you plant and grow fruit from.
Huh.
That's an F1 variety. So you will want to look into how to obtain heirloom seeds.
Mm. Seeds that regenerate more seeds after you plant them.
You want
Okay.
to not be caught in the industrial seed trap.
I like it. All right. Richard, it's been really fun to talk about the dystopian outlook of our future while we sit comfy in our chairs right now.
Just enjoy every second of what we have right now.
I truly do. Uh, I sound black pilled, but I'm pretty optimistic at the end of the day. I guess I'm just generally an optimistic person, despite when the shit is happening around. Maybe it's because I grew up poor. Like things could be worse. I'm living my best life right now. So
There's nothing that makes a meal taste more delicious than hunger. If you're really hungry, a meal is really tasty. And there's very few things that make the largesse that we're enjoying right this moment seem more tangible and real and like what you can revel in its nice how nice it is than if you've had poverty in your past.
yeah, that's true. You
Right,
just have to
Richard?
remember it. I think that's
Yeah.
important. People forget.
Yeah.
You got to remember it. Just like you remember your time in the military when you're like crawling through mud and shit and it sucks. And then you're like, oh, wait, my bed is comfy. All right, Richard. Well, hey, with that, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for doing the theory craft with me this episode. I had a good time. So,
Right on, man.
all right, everybody. If you liked what we're doing, share, subscribe, clip us out of context. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. We talk about dictators and Hitler too much. We get clipped out of context. Then people might start voting for us for MAGA. Anyways, it's been real. Have a good week. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, dude. I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.